Hi, welcome to Mistake Man. This is going to be a quick little video on making some modifications to a little UV light that I have. As I was working through my Destiny Engram box project, I realized decided to use this UV curing resin to bond the outer pentagons to the box. Bonding between clear plastic here and the clear plastic tabs that are on this half of the dodecahedron. And there's a lot of bonds, right? So there's essentially 5 per face, and there's 12 faces, so that's 60 bonds that I've got to do. And so I'm going to be using this a lot, much more than I ever have in the past. This is my little UV lamp that I just got a regular little cheap flashlight and swapped out the white LEDs for UV LEDs. And I've just been using that to help me cure the bond. But it's a little bit flickery. So when I turn it on, it'll be bright for a little while, and then it'll just it's almost like it's got two brightnesses that it flickers between. It'll just suddenly go dim. Sometimes it'll kind of flicker back and forth, and then it'll stay dim for a while, and then just suddenly go bright again. And it just seems to be random. And I haven't figured out where the issue is. I suspect it might be in the switch, or it might be in the connection between essentially this half of, right, so here's the negative, the spring that connects to the negative terminal on the little battery pack. And then it goes through the switch, and then the housing is made of aluminum. And I think it just is bonding across these threads when I screw that on there, and then runs the connection down to the little circuit board, little PCB that's down there that has the LEDs on it. And I think maybe just in that connection is just not great. It doesn't have a lot of conductivity, but I don't really know for sure, because would that just flicker between two brightness states? I don't know. Anyway, so I was thinking about that, and I was like, well, maybe I'll get out the multimeter and start probing this thing to see if I can figure out where the disconnect is, what the actual issue is. And I thought, well, maybe it's the batteries are going dim, and they're losing their charge, and so as they I don't know. Again, I don't know if that would actually cause that weird two-state flickering that it was doing. And so I started thinking about that, but then I thought, I've got so many bonds I've got to do here. It's going to take a lot. I'm going to run through a lot of batteries, and I don't, I don't like that. I, I'm the kind of person who doesn't like to use batteries unless I have to. Like, they're great for convenience and portability, but if you don't need that portability, then all you're doing is just wasting. You're wasting batteries, right? If you could plug into a wall, I've got a wall outlet right there. I've got access to unlimited power, but this obviously can't take advantage of that, right? This is a little battery powered flashlight. So I thought maybe I'll make it not battery powered. So I started thinking I could just attach a little cord to it and just skip the whole battery pack, and then use a DC transformer um, to get me, from the AC wall power to the DC that this needs. And this runs at what, 3 times 1.5 volts, so that's 4.5 volts. So that's pretty close to 5 volts. So USB power outlet outputs 5 volts. This one's 5.2, but I've got others that are right about 5 volts. So why not just do that? And then just cut up a USB cable and run the power to the light. So I decided to go ahead and do that. It would require me making a modification to the housing of the flashlight itself to get the cord through there. And I still wanted it to have a switch, so I wanted to take advantage of that, so I didn't want to run it through there. But this is aluminum, and I don't really want to. I mean, I could cut a hole through the aluminum, but that's going to be a lot harder. I do have, instead, some little plastic flashlights. And if you saw my video on actually lighting the Papercraft Ghost model, this is one of the flashlights I bought to scavenge the internals for the actual lighting the ghost eye. And I had bought a couple of them at the time, and so I had this one left over. So I decided to go ahead and try it out. And now this, the internals for this, it's just a little 9 LED thing with kind of like an internal reflector. It turns out to be the exact same thing that was in this. So I was able to actually just, because I had already swapped out the LEDs on this one for the UV. I could have done that again, but I didn't want to, and I didn't have to because like the internals were exactly the same. I just were able to swap the lights on this one over to there. So now this one's, oh, I took the batteries out. This one's the white, which, I mean, I don't really need this as a flashlight, but I'll hang on to it just in case. Decide to do something fun with it later. But so there's the white flashlight now. And this is the UV ones right here. So this being a plastic housing, I was able to easily just drill a hole through there. I'll kind of try to take this apart. It's all wired up internally now, so I can't completely disassemble it without breaking wires or desoldering stuff, but let's see if I can get a good view of what's happening there. That's not really great on the lighting. Look at that, putting this little flashlight to use. So anyway, so the wire goes through there and just hooks up to what's in there. So what I did was had a little USB cable. I was considering making this like a female USB end, and then I could just get a regular USB-A to USB-A cable to go between the power adapter and this. But then I realized I actually don't have any cables that are just USB-A to USB-A, because most peripherals that you would plug in with a USB these days are going to be not USB-A on one end. They're going to be micro USB or mini USB or USB-C, right? So that's mostly what I had. So instead, I decided to, this is still that same cable, but I use the male end here. And that way I can plug it directly into there, or if this cable's only about that long. If I need a little bit more room, then I do have another cable, much longer cable that has the USB-A male to USB-A female, so that I can just plug this one into the power adapter, and then this one goes into that. So let me kind of show you. Let me get that hooked up. I'll plug it in. And then plug it in there. There we go. Let me close that up just a little bit. It doesn't have to be closed for this to work. But there we go. There's my UV lighting. And this is running perfectly consistently. It doesn't do that little two-state flickering that I was talking about. So I suspect it was in something in this circuit, either the switch or the housing connection that was doing that. Since this is the exact same PCB I've been using all along, the same LEDs. Now, one thing I did have to do was, once I hooked this up, I connected this little cable into the circuit and then just plugged it into the power to test it to make sure I had the polarity of the cables connected up correctly. And I did, but just after being plugged in for just a few seconds, I noticed that the PCB was getting really hot, like uncomfortably hot to the touch. So I just immediately pulled the plug on it and pulled out my multimeter and tested the current that was traveling through, and it was like 500 milliamps, or no, I think it was like 800 milliamps or something insane. Which for 9 LEDs, that's like, I mean, if it was 500 milliamps, that's over 50 milliamps per bulb, which is way too much. So I thought that was a little odd. So I took a closer look at the PCB, and there are no resistors at all. It's just LEDs. Let me pull that out, see if you can see. Like I said, it's kind of all wired up right now, but I don't know if you're going to be able to get a good look at that. But anyway, so there are no resistors on that PCB anywhere. It's just LEDs wired from positive to negative. They're all parallel. And so, yeah, all that current was just going straight through it. So I did have to wire in some resistors. You can see I just hooked them straight up to the negative terminal here. And all I have are these smaller resistors. I think these are 1/8 watt resistors. I'm not actually too sure on that. I'm not sure how you tell other than just like their size. And these are kind of small, so I think they might be 1/8 watt resistors. And it was doing about 0.3 watts, so I wasn't really, I mean, I could, after running it for a little while, I touched the resistors and they were a little warm, but not like excessively so. So I don't know that they would have had an overheating problem, but I went ahead and just, all I needed was 10 ohms. So instead I split that up into 5 ohms, well, 5.6 ohms each, and just double them up so that I could, that they would dissipate the power across the two of them. So, and then again, I ran that for a while, just let it run. And again, I could tell there was a little bit of warmth to it, but hardly any. So I'm not too worried about that anymore. So yeah, here's my USB cable comes in. The white and green data cables I just folded over and taped up because they're not being used. And then the black one goes to where the negative terminal on the battery would be, to the switch. And then this flashlight has kind of some metal rings and then this little metal, I don't know if you can see that, it's kind of dark in there. There's a little metal strip that essentially contacts the ring here and contacts the ring on the bottom and transfers the current down to the outer ring on the PCB. That's the negative terminal on each of those. And then of course, the red positive cable from the USB cable goes to where there used to be a spring there on the middle of that PCB. The spring was just kind of in the way, so I took it off. I desoldered that off there and just soldered the red wire directly to that spot. So there we go. It's nice. It works great. It's super convenient. Now I've just got plug-in USB power UV light that I can use all the time. Now, of course, it's no longer portable. I always have to be close to a power plug, but I have never been in a situation where I've needed to cure UV resin or needed UV light for anything, any other purpose, where I have not also been right next to an outlet. So in this way, I don't have to burn through batteries. I get consistent lighting. As battery power drops, the amount of light output you get drops. I don't have to worry about that. I just get consistent lighting, power output, and don't have to worry about batteries. So anyway, I just thought I'd show you that. Figured some of you out there might be curious and interested and might want to give it a try yourself. So thanks for watching.